The town of Harlan's Bluff did not mourn loudly. It mourned the way old wood warps, slowly, silently, under the weight of too many seasons without relief. The diner on Calloway Street still smelled of burnt coffee and fried bread at dusk, the neon sign in the window buzzing its familiar, broken rhythm. Half the letters had stopped lighting years ago. Nobody fixed it. There was something honest about a sign that no longer pretended to shine fully. Inside, the booths ran along the left wall in a straight, forgettable row, all except one. The third booth from the door sat empty every evening, the way a pulled tooth leaves a hollow the tongue keeps finding. No one sat there by unspoken agreement, the kind of agreement that forms between people who share a grief they never directly named. Nora Callum wiped down every other surface in that diner with the same cloth, same motion, same tired discipline, but she always wiped that booth last, and she always paused a half-second longer than necessary, her hand resting flat against the laminate surface like she was checking for a pulse. She was 34 now. She had the kind of face that had once been openly beautiful and had since become something quieter and more permanent. The beauty pressed inward, sharpened by years into something that made people look twice without knowing why. She didn't talk about Cole Decker. She had not said his name aloud in 4 years. The town respected that silence the way it respected all her silences. Carefully, from a distance. Outside, the light was going amber and thin. A truck rolled past the diner window, dark, road-worn, moving at the pace of something that had driven a very long way and was no longer in a hurry. Nora didn't look up. The radio behind the counter played something low and steel-stringed. A coffee cup clinked. The door didn't open. Not yet. 7 years earlier, Cole Decker had stood in the kitchen of the house on Ridgeline Road and written a letter he already knew he would never send. He was 26 then, lean, dark-eyed, with the kind of restless energy that read as trouble to people who didn't know him and as passion to the one person who did. His hands were steady as he wrote, which surprised him. He had expected them to shake. The words came slowly, not because he didn't know what to say, but because every sentence felt like a door closing behind him. Nora, I need you to know that none of this is what it looks like. I need you to know that leaving is the only way I know to keep you whole. I need you to know. He stopped, folded the paper, pressed it flat with his palm. In the room behind him, in the house they had lived in together for 2 years, her cedarwood candle still burned on the windowsill. He could smell it. He stood in the kitchen for a long time, memorizing the smell, the low sound of her sleeping, the way the floorboards had a particular creak near the bathroom door that she always meant to fix and never did. He had been given a choice 3 days earlier. Not the kind of choice you take time to consider. The kind that arrives already made, dressed up in the language of options so the person delivering it can tell themselves it was fair. Leave Harlan's Bluff, the man had told him. Leave quietly. Leave tonight if you're smart. Or I will make sure that woman of yours understands the consequences of the company she keeps. The man's name was Gerald Marsh. He owned half the county, the profitable half. He sat on 3 boards and shook hands with the governor at Christmas. He was the kind of dangerous that wore a good suit and spoke in complete sentences, which made him more dangerous than the kind that didn't bother. Cole had found something he shouldn't have found. A series of transactions buried in county land records, cross-referenced with federal water contracts. Fraud so elegant it had survived 12 years undetected because it required someone to look at both documents simultaneously and understand what they were seeing. Cole, who had spent 2 years working survey jobs across the county, had seen both, had understood immediately. He had made the mistake of telling one wrong person. So he stood in that kitchen. He put the letter in his coat pocket. And then he walked out the back door and did not look back because he knew that if he looked back, he would turn around, and if he turned around, he would stay, and if he stayed, Nora would be the price of it. He drove north through the dark with nothing but the folder of documents, a change of clothes, and the unsent letter pressed against his chest like a compass pointing somewhere it hurt to go. The word moved through Harlan's Bluff the way words always moved in small towns. Not in a line but in a wave, touching everything at once. Cole Decker was back. He had not come to the diner. He had not come to Ridgeline Road. He had driven that worn truck directly to the county sheriff's office on Main Street, walked in at 4:17 in the afternoon, and placed a leather folder on the desk of Sheriff Dale Pruitt without a word of greeting. The folder was thick and battered, the edges soft from years of handling. It smelled like time. Dale Pruitt had known Cole since the boy was 11 years old. He had also spent 7 years telling himself the story that everyone else told. That Cole had run, that Cole was a coward, that whatever trouble had chased him out of town was probably of his own making. It was easier that way. Clean. He opened the folder. His face changed. Not dramatically. Men like Dale Pruitt did not let their faces change dramatically. But something behind his eyes rearranged itself quietly and permanently, the way furniture moves in a room after an earthquake. Everything slightly off from where it used to be. Cole stood across the desk and said nothing. He had learned, in 7 years, that silence was the most powerful thing a person could offer into a room that needed time to catch up with the truth. Dale closed the folder. Looked up. "How long have you had this?" "7 years, Cole said. "I've been adding to it the whole time." Dale sat back in his chair. The clock on the wall ticked 4 times before either of them spoke again. "You know what this means," Dale said. "Yes," Cole said. "That's why I came back." By evening, 3 people had spotted Cole at the gas station. 2 more had seen his truck outside the sheriff's office. And the information had reached every corner of Harlan's Bluff with the particular velocity of news that carries old pain inside it. Doors that heard his name closed a little tighter. Old conversations resurfaced at kitchen tables, the ones that had been used to explain his absence, to make it make sense, to fold it into a shape that a community could live alongside. He ran. He got into something dirty and he ran. That's who Cole Decker always was. Nora heard it from Bess Whitmore, who worked the pharmacy counter and had never learned to soften information before delivering it. She said it plainly, the way she said everything. Cole Decker was back in town, had gone to see Dale Pruitt, was staying at the Mill Road Motel. Nora said nothing. She counted out a customer's change with the same steady hands she always used and waited until the door closed behind Bess before she allowed herself one long, slow breath. She did not feel what she expected to feel. She had expected anger, the clean, clarifying kind she had cultivated carefully over years. What she felt instead was stranger, structural. Like a wall she had built load-bearing inside herself, had just been informed it might need to be re-examined. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she was done. At the end of the counter, 12-year-old Eli Marsh, Gerald Marsh's nephew, though nobody talked about that connection anymore, sat on a stool drinking a Coke and listening to everything adults said with the particular attention of a child who had learned that the things grown-ups didn't explain were always the most important ones. He had heard Cole Decker's name before. He had heard it attached to words like gone and left and never came back. He finished his Coke, set $1 on the counter, and walked out into the evening with a destination he hadn't planned until 10 seconds ago. They met in the parking lot of the hardware store on account of neither of them going looking for the other, which meant the town conspired to put them in the same place at the same time, the way towns sometimes do with unfinished business. Cole was crossing to his truck. Nora was coming out of the supply entrance with a box of light bulbs. They both stopped. 7 years collapsed into a single moment of absolute stillness. He looked different. The recklessness was gone. Not beaten out of him, but resolved, the way metal hardens when you let it cool slowly. He was thinner. The lines around his eyes were new. He carried himself the way people carry themselves when they have been a long time alone with something heavy. Nora set the box down on the hood of the nearest car. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were doing something complicated and controlled. "Nora." His voice was the same. That was somehow the worst part. "Don't." The word came out flat and final. He stopped. He didn't come closer. He stood there in the early dark with his hands at his sides and let her have the silence. Let her decide what shape this moment would take. 7 years, she said. Not a question. A statement she had made many times in private and never once aloud. "I know. You don't get to just..." She stopped. "Reset. What are you doing here, Cole?" "Finishing something." "That's not an answer. It's all I can give you right now." She laughed. A short, hard sound with no joy in it. "That's so like you. That is so exactly like you." He looked at her steadily. "Did you know Gerald Marsh bought the land next to your father's property?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Wrong shape for the conversation. Specific in a way that felt deliberate. She stared at him. What does that have to do with? When did it happen? I don't, 2 years ago, maybe. Cole, why? That land sits over the eastern water line, he said quietly. The same water line that runs through 11 contracts I've been documenting for 7 years. She didn't respond immediately. She was doing the thing she always did when she was recalibrating. Going very still, very quiet, the thoughts moving fast behind those dark eyes. What did you do? She finally asked. And this time, the question carried something different. Not accusation. Something closer to the first tentative shape of understanding. Not here, he said. Not tonight. He picked up the box of light bulbs she had left on the hood and handed it back to her. His fingers brushed hers for exactly 1 second. I'm sorry it took so long. He walked to his truck. She stood in the parking lot and did not move for a very long time. From the shadow of the alley between the hardware store and the barbershop, Eli watched the whole thing. The black SUV had been parked outside the Mill Road Motel since 8 o'clock. Cole clocked it the moment he returned. The engine off but still warm, the windows tinted past the legal limit, the plates from 2 counties over. Amateur hour for a man like Gerald Marsh, but Gerald Marsh was used to not needing to be subtle. The phone call came at 9:15. The motel's landline, which meant someone had made a point of finding it. You still have time, the voice said. Not Gerald himself, one of the smooth, interchangeable men who did his preliminary work. The sheriff hasn't acted on anything yet. Walk away, and this ends cleanly. Cole sat on the edge of the motel bed with the leather folder across his knees. Tell Gerald I made copies 7 years ago. Tell him I've been making copies every time I add something new. Tell him the folder he's thinking about taking is one of 8. Silence on the line. Tell him I came back because I have enough now, Cole continued. And tell him what I have includes the conversation he had with me the night he told me to leave. I recorded it. Took me 6 months to find someone who could clean up the audio. But it's there. Every word. The line went dead. Cole set the phone down. He wasn't afraid. He had been afraid for a long time. A slow, permanent fear that had become so familiar it functioned almost like a companion, but it had burned down over the years to something that no longer controlled him. He had come back because the fear of staying silent had finally outgrown the fear of everything else. He didn't sleep. He sat in the chair by the window and watched the SUV and thought about Nora's face in the parking lot. The exact moment the question behind her eyes had shifted from how could you to what did you know. They came at 2 in the morning. Not the SUV, that was the watch. 2 men came around the back of the motel, quiet and practiced, and would have been through the window without much difficulty except that Cole was not in the bed where a sleeping man would be. He was in the corner opposite the door, already standing, the folder inside his jacket. The first man through registered the empty bed and the confusion cost him 2 seconds. Cole used them. It was not elegant. It was not the kind of fight that looked like anything composed. It was fast and desperate and painful, and Cole took a blow to the ribs that cracked something and a cut above his left eye that immediately made everything on that side blurry and warm. He got through the door, into the parking lot, running. The SUV started. He cut left, away from the road, into the back field behind the motel that he had walked twice since arriving because a man who has been careful for 7 years does not stop being careful when it matters most. Dark grass, a fence, the creek bed beyond it. He heard the vehicle hit gravel and then lose him in the dark. He ran until the sound faded and then he slowed and then he stopped, bent double in the creek bed, breathing hard, one hand pressed to his ribs. The folder was still inside his jacket. He checked it twice. From the slope above him, a voice said quietly, "There's a gap in the fence about 30 feet that way. I can show you." Cole straightened, squinted through the dark and the blood. Eli stood on the bank with a flashlight held low, pointing it at the ground so it wouldn't reach far. 12 years old, still in his jacket from earlier in the day, completely calm in the way certain children are calm in a crisis, the ones who have grown up around tension and learned to move through it without flinching. "You've been following me," Cole said. "Since the gas station," Eli said without apology. "My mom said you helped our family once." A long time ago, before I was born. He paused. She said if you ever came back, you'd probably need somewhere to go. Cole looked at this boy for a long moment. What's your mom's name? Rachel Doone. She was Rachel Forsyth before. Cole closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. Rachel Forsyth, one of the names in the folder. One of the families Gerald Marsh had defrauded and then threatened into silence. He had spent months documenting what had happened to her family. He had never met her son. Lead the way, Cole said. He sat at Rachel Doone's kitchen table at 3 in the morning with a cloth pressed to his eye and his jacket folded across his lap with the folder inside it. Eli had gone to bed after being asked twice and refusing once. Nora sat across the table from Cole because Rachel had called her, had known, with the instinct of someone who had held a piece of this story for years, that this was the moment it needed its missing piece. Cole told her everything. Not quickly. Not with the defensive efficiency of a man trying to justify himself. He told it slowly and in order, the way truth requires, because truth doesn't compress well, and the version that compresses is always slightly wrong. He told her about the records, about what he had found, about the night Gerald Marsh had come to him not with aggression but with the particular cold courtesy of a man who believes he is simply managing a situation. He told her what Marsh had said about her, the specific, quiet way he had named her, the way the threat had been constructed not as violence but as consequence. Things happen to people who are associated with problems. The clinical precision of it, which was somehow worse than rage would have been. He told her he had made a choice in that kitchen, standing next to her candle, and that he had truly believed, that leaving was the only door that kept her safe. I was 26, he said. I thought silence was protection. It wasn't, she said. No. It was the worst 7 years of my life. I know. She was not crying. She was past the kind of pain that produces tears. She was in the deeper territory beyond it, where the body has already processed the grief and what remains is something more complicated and more permanent. Understanding without absolution. Truth without immediate comfort. He reached into his jacket. He took out the letter, creased and soft from years of folding and refolding. The ink in places faded to near illegibility. He put it on the table between them. She looked at it for a long time before she picked it up. She unfolded it carefully, the way you handle something that has waited too long to be opened. She read it. Her expression did not change on the surface, but something underneath it, something foundational, shifted in a way Cole could see across the table. She folded it again. Did not give it back. Dale Pruitt had spent the night making phone calls he should have made 7 years earlier. By morning, the folder, not the one Cole had been carrying, but the scanned and encrypted copies that had been filed with a federal contact 3 states away, had reached people with the standing to act on them. Gerald Marsh was taken from his home at 6:45 in the morning. He came quietly, which surprised no one who had ever understood him. Loud exits were for people who had no other options. Gerald Marsh had always believed he would find another option. He was still believing it when the car pulled away. The town found out in pieces and reacted in the particular way of communities confronting a truth that rewrites their recent past. Not with the clean satisfaction of justice, but with the uncomfortable, necessary work of revision. The things they had said about Cole Decker, the story they had told about who he was and why he had gone, all of it required adjustment. That kind of adjustment is not comfortable. It is important, but it is not comfortable. Dale Pruitt held a brief, plain-spoken press statement on the steps of the sheriff's office. He did not editorialize. He stated what the documents contained and confirmed that Cole Decker had spent 7 years building the case in cooperation with a federal investigator. He said Cole Decker was not, and had never been, the person Harlan's Bluff had decided he was. He said it plainly. That was enough. Eli stood at the edge of the gathered crowd and listened. He had his hands in his jacket pockets and the particular expression of a boy who is processing something too large to summarize but too important to look away from. Afterward, he went home and told his mother what he had seen, and Rachel Doone sat at the kitchen table where Cole had bled and spoken truthfully the night before, and she allowed herself, very quietly, to cry. Not from sadness. From the specific relief of a weight that has been carried so long you forgot it wasn't a permanent part of your body. Cole was at the diner at 7 in the morning. He did not plan it exactly. He was in the neighborhood of planning it, which meant he parked on Calloway Street and sat in his truck for a while and then went inside because the alternative was sitting in the truck until he ran out of reasons not to. The diner was quiet. 2 other customers, both local, both regulars, who looked at him with the reconfiguring eyes of people hearing a story revised in real time. He sat in the 3rd booth from the door. He sat in the booth. He was still sitting there when Nora came in through the back, still in her coat, and stopped when she saw where he was. She looked at him in that booth for long enough that it meant something. Then she went behind the counter. She came back with 2 cups of coffee. She set one in front of him and sat down across from him in the same seat she had not sat in for 7 years, and did not ask if he was staying, because some questions are more honest as silence. He wrapped both hands around the cup. His ribs hurt. His eye was swollen half shut. He looked like a man who had been in a fight and won something that wasn't the fight. Outside, Harlan's Bluff moved through its morning with the slow, unremarkable rhythm of a place that has weathered things before and will weather them again. Trucks on the main road, the pharmacy opening, kids on their way to school, including one 12-year-old boy who paused on the sidewalk outside the diner, looked in through the window at the 2 people sitting in the 3rd booth, and allowed himself a small, private nod before continuing on his way. Inside, Cole's hands stopped shaking. It was not a grand moment. No one marked it. But Nora noticed, because she noticed everything about him, had always noticed everything about him. It was the thing about loving someone that no amount of years and silence and hurt manages to fully dismantle. The coffee was hot. The booth was worn smooth from decades of use. The neon sign in the window buzzed its broken, familiar hum. He didn't say he was staying. She didn't ask. But he didn't look like a man about to leave. And in Harlan's Bluff, where people had learned to read the difference between someone passing through and someone finally arriving, that was enough. For now, it was more than enough.